can't tell the difference between my dreams and my waking life. Let's talk about Moon Knight, episode 1. How's it going, guys? Welcome to a brand new breakdown, if you will, and review for Moon Knight. And yes, no, I was taking the piss out of that accent. It's because, as you can tell, I have a British accent, but there's something about shows like this where they do British accents, and I always feel like it's like massively exaggerated. Even the BBC do that, and this isn't like a, you know, a breakdown on accents. It's really not bad. I'm just joking, but it's just something about Stephen and Donna. It's like, oh, Stevie, you know, bloody hell, Stevie. I guess this is going to be a review of Moon Knight's accents, but no, really. Moon Knight is out, guys. What did I think of the latest Marvel Disney Plus show? And one, I'll have you know, and I think a lot of you feel the same, I was really excited for. Not only am I a massive fan of Oscar Isaac, but Moon Knight as a Marvel character is definitely more up my alley. And I might as well say it right off the bat, I really enjoyed this. So let's go through it in a bit of a recap way, go throughout the really interesting parts of the episodes. Be sure to let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, of course, and maybe consider subscribing if you find yourself brand new here, because we cover and review and break down all of the Marvel Disney Plus shows, as well as the Star Wars shows when they come, when The Mandalorian Season 3 eventually comes to our screens. So yeah, hopefully you enjoy this channel and the episode reviews ahead. And yeah, this started off with Ethan Hawke's Arthur Harrow doing some kind of, ritual. As we know and what we gathered from the trailers going in, he was going to be this fairly worshipped, somewhat, fist of the deity, the Egyptian god, if you will, Armmit. You can kind of read between the lines of what will be going on throughout the episodes, the avatars, if you will, for the gods of... that reminds me of the Avatar line. What you mean the anime? Oh, I really like the blue people. I can't help it with the accent. But that beginning scene really kind of gave you a little bit of a peek into Arthur. Like, he's even willing to do this kind of, it's almost like this punishment, if you will, when he cracked the glass, put it in his sandals, and you heard every crunch that he took with each footstep, which is why I suppose he needs that cane, because imagine navigating around on shards of glass on your feet. Like, geez Louise, a papa cheese. And I have a bit of a theory behind this, considering that he is the one who is doing the balancing of the soul, if you will. I mean, that's as we get throughout the episode. And we get a good example of this later on, not only with that older lady who failed the test, you could say, but also Stephen himself. But I wonder about, Arthur. Like, what if he... despite being this fist of Armmit, and the return, if you will, trying to facilitate that return, what if he actually would be on the bad end of the scale, but he is continuously doing the works for his Egyptian god, and that is kind of this penance, if you will, substituting... And the fact that he is the vessel, like, allowing her return to happen and get all these followers, etc., etc. I'm just wondering if he is on the bad side of the scale and basically he is always punishing or doing some kind of penance for that. Just something to put in your mind. I'm sure these answers will be revealed. But then we have good old Stephen wake up in his bed, and we get, what we've kind of seen in the trailers before. Not only is he restrained for his legs being tied to the post or whatever, you even have sand around the edge of the bed, and that's kind of, the superstitious, keeping out some kind of evils or like whatever could be lurking, might not be able to penetrate that barrier. We also have the tape on the door to see if that broke the seal, even though I do believe that Marc, whenever they return, just ties himself back into bed, puts the tape back on the door, not in that order, obviously, because if they're going through the extent, or Marc is going through the extent of replacing the fish, you have to think that he's, doing that as well. I mean, because later on, as we know, the fish seemingly is replaced because Gus had one fin, and now there's two fins. That just kind of reminds me as well, talking about this humor, Marvel humor in movies and TV shows doesn't always land with me, but I feel like with what I saw in this episode, I was quite entertained, joke-wise. Like, it didn't feel like a Marvel MCU movie where, for example, this is a way to put it, and like No Way Home, as much as I enjoyed that film, I feel like a lot of the jokes were just like... like, really? Does it have to be every 30 seconds? But this, you know, I just feel like with Steven in of himself, the character that he is, how kind of bewildered he is trying to figure out what's going on with him, it just led to a lot of organic, for his character, comedic moments to happen, if you know what I mean. And just, I think the British accent that Oscar Isaac has as Steven is just funny in of itself. And, you know, just those little moments like, oh, what, the anime? And it's like, oh, sorry, cheers, you know, things like this. It just, I don't know. Obviously subjective to me, it landed quite well. And when you have someone like Steven, can't help myself, okay, dealing with the anarchy that he finds himself blanking in out of this episode, obviously seeing Steven deal with that all around him continued that entertainment for me. We have him on the phone in this moment saying, and I believe he's like leaving voicemails for his mother or something, and at the end of it he says he still wakes up every morning feeling as though he's been hit by a bus. And that is quite literally because he is going out sometimes as Marc during the night, as he already knows, and he's trying to stay awake at night for, but he doesn't exactly know that he's been through activities that has caused him some pain, and we see him fall asleep on the bus. That's because he's literally, as soon as he goes to bed, Marc might wake up, and, you know, poor guy, ultimately, you know, they're obviously getting into a bit of DID here with the different personalities, rather than, I believe, in the earlier original Moon Knight runs, it was actually more just aliases. So here it is actually, as you can pretty much tell, literal separate personalities. With also that voice, you know, calling him like a parasite, it made me laugh as well. I believe is Khonshu, the god of the moon, and that all kind of comes back to the, you know, the very thing that kind of brings up and creates Moon Knight, and it's going to be interesting to see that get leaned into a lot more throughout as the episodes unfold. I thought we would get into that a little bit more, but his voice was used quite sparingly throughout the situations that Steven was in, just kind of like, let Marc take over, and things like that. That was quite entertaining, and we did see Khonshu throughout, kind of in that elevator moment where Steven was terrified, and then again in the elevator behind. It was pretty awesome then. That old lady as well was absolutely terrified of Steven, but I suppose you kind of would be thinking, why is this person freaking out? Maybe I don't want to necessarily be that close to somebody who's that unpredictable, but apparently is also finding my contact lens. We also have another example of the separate lives of Marc and Steven with that lady, I think Dylan was the name on the subtitles, talking about the date, and he's like, oh, what do you mean? Are you dating me? But no, they were going out for steak, but obviously this was perplexing to Steven because Marc obviously arranged this date. Again, in this episode, as entertaining as it comes across, I do feel quite sorry for Steven as it unfolds, because as I said, it's funny in moments, especially even moments in the car chase, and there's moments that are really tense, like later on with the dogs, or the hounds, if you will, that Arthur sends after Steven. But you have the moments of sadness, like, for example, he's a vegan, Steven, but Marc isn't, and he arranged that you know, restaurant date, and he's just so alone in that moment and perplexed, because he's obviously very concerned of what's going on with him, that he's already taken these precautions to tie himself down and whatnot, that he realizes at that restaurant it's like 2 days have gone by. And I don't know, just that camera shot that zooms in the face, it's just, I don't know, I feel a bit of empathy for the character. And I like how Oscar Isaac and the way they shot that scene managed to bring that out even in an episode that, I don't want to make it seem like it was comedy or anything, it's just, you know, it was it's nice how they do get into these multifaceted tones. Like, there's funny moments, there's kind of these sincere moments for just the empathy for Marc, but there's also the tense moments towards the end of the episode where we got that epic moment right at the very end with Moon Knight himself. It's just like it just kind of feels like not a very typical MCU kind of thing. And you may have heard that, I think, be spoke about around in various articles or videos, like, you know, Moon Knight technically is a part of the MCU, yet isn't beholden to it in a way. Or maybe that's my own way of putting it, I don't know. But I feel like that statement's true. This is MCU-y, obviously, and it is canon within that, but it's not like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, or WandaVision, or, you know, whatever else is going on there, with how those were very much so interconnected with the events. This is pretty damn isolated, and I'm quite a fan of that. It also reminds me of how I just kind of felt bad for him talking to he doesn't really seem to have a lot of friends. You know, he's a gift shoppist, but he's also talking to the mime, or the kind of fake statue man, just talking about all these different things, or his date and whatnot. And I really like the way they show this somewhat, I want to say the word duality, but it's not like there's only two sides to Steven, or Marc Spector, if you will. But the puddle shot, as he was going away from the guy, you couldn't really tell which one was the puddle, but either way, there's a few moments in the episode that's shown through reflections and whatnot that just kind of show the multiple sides to this character. And this is where the episode really just goes from like, okay, we're in London, we're getting a bit of, you know, the museum stuff, the gift shop is stuffed, and frickin' Donna with a frickin' stavey, like she kind of annoys me, but I know that's intentional. And we had a little bit of an in-between period, which really allowed us to get into the character of Arthur a lot more, where you see how this town is really worshipping him. It's kind of one of those cult leader-esque kind of real-life emulations into the show here, and where you have all these people like sold on the idea of making this place a heaven, and he's basically recruiting people. They all have the tattoos, as we saw. There's a lot of members just already there in the museum towards the end of the episode. But here, he basically judges one of the characters. They ended up looking like they had their life force drained from them. And it didn't matter if she's led a good life so far, as detailed by Arthur here. Armmit works in ways where it might be something you could still have yet to do that is bad. So you could basically end up with a bad judgment. But that was after already seeing this other guy who had the face or the heart of a good man, or whatever he said. God, yeah, this is what I mean about the comedy. Maybe it's just Oscar Isaac that sells it very well for me. When he commanded everyone to kneel, and we just had Steven there just like, oh, bollocks, you know. It's just like, oh, poor Steven. Now, this whole scene, and what Marc Spector must have already done, because the exchange didn't go down, is that he acquired that golden scarab, and clearly Arthur Harrow here really wants it. Like, he's going through extreme lengths to get it, even up until the end of the episode. And it's a bit of a mystery, and that's one thing I like about this show. There is like an underlying tone of a bit of mystery there, because at the end of the day, as I always say on this channel, adaptations aren't copy and paste. So, you know, there's still going to be, whether you know Moon Knight inside and out or not, these innovations there. And I think that this scarab is important to the plan of Arthur's, because he wants to really make this new world, as he puts it. And I think that the scarab could be one of the tools that Arthur is going to use to bring Armmit back in a way that will allow the plan to unfold, that will make this new world. I know that was an ambiguous kind of judgment from me, if you will, but I think it could be going that direction, which is why we had like Marc not allow, you know, the scarab to be given to Arthur in that moment, and even Marc took over, and we saw Steven just in that fighting pose with bodies all around him, which leads me to like just bring up something, a bit of a tangent here. There was a bit of blood coming out of some of those bodies, and it just makes me think, I don't know if you've heard it recently, Disney, why are you removing like some of the scenes from Falcon and the Winter Soldier? You may have heard about this, but if you aren't aware, this isn't even due to the maturity setting, which is interesting, because they do have a setting where I think it can avoid some of the maturer things or something like that. But now, regardless of if you have that enabled or not, there's scenes in Falcon and the Winter Soldier where there's bodies with blood, you know, that moment where the pole is swung and it impales that person into the shipment container or whatever around about there. Now it just bounces off. They keep editing it, and it's just like, when it was released, why remove it now, months and months later? Yet now we're seeing Moon Knight with bits of blood here and there. It's just weird to me. Is it? I just thought like I would start this conversation, considering this scene, or this episode in general, had a few bloody bits, but like literally it's the equivalent of that moment where we have Steven in this pose and you see the bodies around him. Imagine if they had like no blood at all. That's what they've done. They've touched it up, got rid of different bits, and it would just be like somebody lying there. It's really, really weird. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I recommend looking it up, maybe on Twitter or something like that. You will see exactly what I mean. Now, this is like one of the very few contrived moments I feel like there was in the episode. I mean, it led to an amazing sequence, but like Steven in this moment came to again, ran away, got in the van, and of course the keys are in there. I mean, I'm sure like at the end of the day, I feel like what this show has going for it in many ways is the fact that we have this character who can be taken over, is that it allows those gaps and whatnot in time and stuff to not really be heavily critiqued, because you know it aids the show very well in that way. So I don't have a problem with anything like that. I just thought, like, really, like, keys left in the van in that moment, that's a bit lucky, isn't it? I mean, I guess he would have got away in another method, like maybe Marc would just take over again, but I don't know. I just thought, like, I know there's gonna be somebody who'd be like, oh yeah, but sometimes people do leave the keys in their car. But I was like, really though? Really? This led to that very entertaining chase sequence, and we have Steven saying, oh, I don't even have my license. But yeah, this was, yeah, what more can I say? It was very entertaining going in and out of Marc Spector. Overall, I just loved the cuts in between Steven. Like, there were quite a few more than what I thought. Like, it was going back and forth between him quite a few times. To then he was in reverse, and it was, oh god, like, what do I do now? And again, Khonshu commentating, just saying, you know, then just leave us be, parasite, and moments like that. And the only critical thinking that I have with the DID stuff is that, just jumping to the end of the episode quickly and briefly, is that we had Marc Spector talking to Steven saying, you know, like, I can save us, you need to, like, you know, let me take over and stuff. I just thought, like, well, if you did that several times before in moments where you were about to get killed and in danger, it did feel like it was one of those moments where they just kind of wanted to do this scene so, you know, you could have that articulation between both characters, because in theory they've already set the precedent for Mark taking over when Steven's life was in danger. And arguably in that moment at the end of the episode when that hound was breaking through, he could have just done the same thing. I just felt like, why did he have to get such permission in that moment? Maybe you could argue that he was so panicked that he couldn't, but I don't know, man. Like, when he was in the car, he was also extremely panicked, and Mark still managed to, you know, take over the body and do his thing. So not a massive issue. I just felt like it was one of those transparent moments where they wanted to do the reveal of the character, have that communication, but at the same time, he could have just taken over if he wanted to. Either way, after some time, this is when Steven starts to learn a little bit more himself. And this is, you know, despite talking about what I just spoke about, again, I get why they did it. And that came after the very fact that Steven is learning more about his whole situation. And that's something I am looking forward to. Him being let in on the fold. I want to know why Marc Spector and Khonshu and whatnot are taking such measures to replace the fish and, like, keep him out the loop. You know, was he maybe to them like he was just some personality who's a bit more trouble and hassle and the idiot than what he's worth, so they just try and keep him happy or whatever and live that normal life to keep up appearances. But now he's being let in on the fold. He's gonna be in situations where, as we see in the trailers, he allows them to take over, like he willingly can kind of click it on, switch, you know, the Marc Spector mode, Moon Knight mode on. So I like that he's getting in on the fold when he found the phone. We have Layla calling, but we also saw another name there, Duchamp, which we are probably going to get a lot more information on in episodes to come. But this is another example of, you know, the communication. In Mark's life, maybe you could argue it might be a romantic interest, but I'm not entirely sure, because you could argue that she isn't, because he was going to go on a date with Dylan this episode to that steak restaurant. So maybe Layla is somebody who was working with the mercenary version of Marc Spector in his life, and maybe was just helping him out. I think she said it had been a few months since they had last spoken. So even when Mark has been taken over recently, he hasn't answered Layla for some reason. But it depends, I think, how long ago Marc Spector was infused with the Moon Knight powers when he had that whole thing with Khonshu. And I don't want to give too much away there, just in case we do get those answers, you know, drip-fed to us throughout the episode. But I'm wondering if that was a prior colleague of his, or like a peer, if you will, of his mercenary days. And ever since a few months back, or months and months back, he hasn't been in communication with people like Layla, because he's been living and has been subjected to this new lifestyle of being Moon Knight and all these other personalities, etc., etc. So I feel like it has something to do with that, but let me know if you think it's something completely different. Again, just like looking at the notes here, you could have given me any sign that you're okay. I thought something happened to you. What if something did happen to him? And that is what I just said, but he just cut off communication because his life has been kind of haywire ever since becoming Moon Knight. And I think the interesting thing that Steven's going to learn is that he isn't the OG personality. It's actually Marc Spector. So I can't wait for that to unfold, albeit that, again, adaptation-wise, they could change that up a little bit, which is kind of what they have with making Steven the primary, at least for now. Now, this is where we get to the end of the episode where we have Arthur Harrow following Steven to the museum. He was even on the same bus as him, which I felt was kind of weird. I was like, you weren't going to talk to him on the bus? Like, I don't know, but either way, this gets to that part where they were talking about Armmit, you know, the whole judgment thing. Would you not weed out a garden or something before the roses grow, or whatever, because he was talking about she was weary waiting for sinners to commit their crimes before punishing them. So clearly this is probably amounting up to some big plan where he can put upon the whole world, maybe. Instead of judging them as of when, what if we could judge everyone who is potentially going to do some bad? So the only people that are left in this heaven that he was saying earlier are the good people, which would be something you want to prevent, because just because she's sensing something bad that you might do in the future doesn't mean you're going to do it. Like, you know, that old lady who's lived a good life her whole life, but she still got drained and started looking like Palpatine. And she was betrayed by those gods and even her own avatar, which is something we're definitely going to learn more about, this whole avatar situation and how that is also reflected with Moon Knight himself. This is when we had that moment where Steven allowed himself to be judged, but the scales, we didn't exactly see how they finally like tipped or whatever, but I think it's just, you know, they couldn't decide because of the multiple personalities of Marc Spector or Steven. You can't make a firm judgment on him, which is why we had Arthur Harrow view that DID as labeling as there's chaos in you. Like there couldn't be that clear firm judgment like the old lady who ended up dying because of whatever she was going to do. You can't really do that when there's multiple kind of identities living in one person. And there we have it. Like eventually Steven submits to Marc. Again, I argue that he could have just taken over if he wanted to, because he's like, we're out of time. It's like, Marc, you could still just hijack. But either way, you know, squabble aside there, nitpick aside, awesome. I just kind of was like, oh, I wish we just had like 2 more seconds, because Moon Knight seems savage. Like he was going ham on that hound, if you will. And I like it ever since we had that leak, by the way, a long time ago now, which, you know, it turned out to be a real leak of the actual bandage kind of costume. I liked it. I've always liked this Moon Knight design. I think he looks really, really cool. So I can't wait to see more of this next episode, especially some actual Moon Knight vigilante-esque action from Marc Spector. And that more or less wraps up my rambly thoughts about this. So guys, I really enjoyed it. I feel like they set the stage of the show well with, you know, giving us that perspective from Steven. It's almost like he was figuring it out along with the audience, if you know what I mean. And as things happen, you piece more pieces together. I felt like Arthur was introduced quite well. I like the cinematography. That was pretty awesome with how they did trippy kind of shots, likened to that of the very trippy state that Steven lives in and is experiencing all episode long. I felt like the action was pretty cool from what we got. It was entertaining. The humor wasn't overboard for me. Maybe I'm a bit biased for Oscar Isaac, but I really liked him. And, you know, clearly we're going to see multiple different angles of his acting as Steven, but then as Marc, he was a bit more like himself, if you know what I mean. Not like this, talking like this, but he was a bit like, you know, Steven, we're running out of time, you know? The mystery kind of, it's not, you know, fully in our face, but it's a bit of ambiguity there. That's always, I'm a bit of a sucker for that, even if you're familiar with it. You know, you can kind of think, oh, okay, this is a bit fresh, a bit new for fans to kind of know a bit of the backstory already. And yeah, I'm just looking forward to seeing this evolve. You know, 6 episodes again, and I'm here for the ride. So tune back again next week, guys, for my review and breakdown. We'll probably get into a little bit more of a formulaic approach to the scenes, and let me know your theories and your thoughts on anything and everything, from the voice of Khonshu to whatever, right? To even the little Marc Spector moments and Steven moments. But either way, guys, like the video if you did enjoy it. Do subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and I do have a Discord server. All of those links are in the description down below. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you people of the Marvel Cinematic Universe in the next video. Goodbye.